Good morning, everyone. Hi, and I'm Shilpa. I'm the school clinical coordinator for Stepping Stone Center. I'm also a clinical supervisor. In by profession, I am a speech therapist. Today, we are here to learn about speech-language pathology as well as how speech therapy. By the way, speech-language pathology is another name for speech-language therapy. So the course is called as speech-language pathology. Today, we are here to learn about how speech therapy will help you in the early stages of life. So these are the goals for today's presentation. These are the agendas which we'll be going through. What is the difference between speech, language, and behavior? We'll be looking into all three of it. What do you understand while we go through this agenda? I would like you to think, what do you understand by speech? What do you understand by language? Is it both the same? And what do you understand by behavior and how does it relate? Think about it. Then I would be explaining you about what is language therapy, and I'll be explaining about what is how and when should you be starting speech language therapy. And there are certain prerequisites for communication. By the way, communication is a whole different word, but I will make you understand that we have different prerequisites which should be achieved before a child is able to start communication in terms of speech or language. And we will be looking into certain areas wherein speech therapy looks in, like feeding, the articulation, that is a way of pronunciation, as well as we'll be looking into language stimulation techniques. I will be making you understand about all of these things. Now here is the basic structure of how the communication happens altogether. So think about, if I am asking you, how are you doing? We all are sitting in a group and one of the person is asking, how are you doing? And the other person has to answer that. So what are the steps which happens in between those is what we have to look into it. So first thing happens is attending to the stimulus. So I'm the receiver and a person has sent a message. The sender has sent the message, that is, how are you doing? Now that particular message is going to come to me. So I have to first attend to the stimulus, yes, and then I would listen. So I look at the person, so that means I give the attention, and then I listen, and then I register that what he has said, and saying that how are you doing has to come to my mind, and I have to understand that, okay, this is English language. And the person means how means a question. They are meaning to ask how my health is at present. So these are the things, or well-being at present. So these are the things which I already have in memory, so I'm able to retrieve it. Let's look at it step by step here. So we will go back to that particular slide again, but then let's look at it step by step here. So this is how the model looks like. When we are listening, so if we are sitting in a group, so we can hear a lot of different sounds, right? I could hear roads sound, I could hear vehicles around, I could hear fan sound. There's so many other different sounds which are coming in, and also I could touch things, I could feel things, there's light. There's so many different kinds of stimulations coming throughout from the environment. But my brain decides to give attention to one particular stimulus. That is, somebody asks me, how are you doing? So that particular stimulus is coming along with a lot of different stimuluses. So my brain should be able to, that first step we were talking about right here. The first step we were talking about right here, that attend to the stimulus. How does that happen? This whole step, this is what we are looking at. That a child is playing around and we call their name. Maybe they don't reply, maybe they do reply. How do they reply? So the part is that they will amongst all the other stimulus which is going on, even that I'm really interested in playing my blocks, I am able to listen to that person saying my name. So I decide to look back. So that particular part at, this is like the brain, and all these stimulus coming in will get minus, and I will only get this particular stimulus which is very important to me inside. So immediately the moment the stimulus comes to me, how are you doing? And it seems important to my brain, so I get it, and I repeat it in my mind. You would realize most of the time, whatever we hear, it is echoing in our mind, if you think about it at present. And then it goes to, because we are able to analyze it, it goes to our memory. So this is how the first step we spoke about right here, it happens, okay? And then definitely if our hearing is all fine, we are able to take it to our memory. Now, there are certain types of attentions which we are looking into here. Attention is definitely the first prerequisite which comes in when we are talking about, we'll reach speech, language, communication later. But first, we need to understand what are the prerequisites. And we are talking about attention at present. So these are the types. So you have focused attention, you have shifting attention, sustained attention, divided attention, and selective attention. So these are 5 types which we talk about, and most importantly, we call it together. We'll speak about the combined term called joint attention, which is the main, another prerequisite for communication. So I won't take much time on this slide. I just want to make you understand that focused attention is something wherein the child is, visually or giving visual attention or auditory attention to a certain information. Shifting attention is wherein he's shifting from one particular object to another, incident happening. Sustained attention is just like reading or listening to a story mom is being telling. So that's something, sustaining a particular attendance to or focus to a task. Divided attention is wherein I'm writing, but I'm also listening to what mom is telling. So it's kind of a multitask. And selective attention is wherein your child attends to one specific task while filtering out every other distractions which goes on. I think that happens very less with all of us as well. So divided attention is another word for joint attention, and joint attention is very important, wherein we all are sitting in a group, and or maybe I can give an example of your child. So me and your child are playing, and he already knows all the puzzle pieces, and this is A, this is B, this is apple, this is banana. They know everything. And I say, hey, let's, I tell him, instruct him, hey, I don't want the apple here. Can we keep the banana? Now, he has to pay attention to the puzzle and the pieces, as well as attention to what I'm speaking, and also the stimulation coming from his head about, okay, ma'am is telling it wrong. It's supposed to be other way around. So these all 3 stimuluses coming together would be a joint attention. So this is the second prerequisites we are looking about. And in between this, we are looking into eye gaze or eye contact. So you would see divided attention also comes in picture over there. Not always when the child is not looking at you, it doesn't mean that the child is not attending you. A lot of children in spectrum have problem in eye contact, and there is a certain reason for it. That being, a lot of children have pattern following, and our face, not like rhymes. Rhymes have a certain patterns which comes in YouTube. It has, certain colors which repeats, and certain characters which will be keep repeating in the end of the sentences are rhymed. So it also has a tune which is very in a pattern, which is comfortable, calm, what is expected. So the child is okay to look at it. But then when it comes to our faces are always, we are, it's not something that they can expect always. We have different kinds of words coming out from us and different kinds of expressions and intonations, sometimes that stimulus is too much for them to take, and they might not be very interested in looking at it, which cannot be, if you're not slow enough, they possibly would take it as overwhelmed. They would feel overwhelmed, and then they look at another thing, which, maybe an object which he can control or she can control, and that is more interesting rather than looking at the face. So, which definitely comes in, when it comes to imitation, because eye contact is important when it comes to imitation as a skill. So those are the skills which get affected when the child is not giving eye contact. So we spoke about joint attention. We spoke about, attending to focus attention, joint attention, eye contact. These were the first things we spoke about. Then definitely we look at, so how we spoke about the attending to the stimulus, the person hears and then retrieves. And how does this retrieve happen? So once these prerequisites are set, a person heard it. Now, when we listen to one word and we associate that word with particular material, we form, it's like a big, huge library in our brain. So there's so many folders, just like computer. So there's an English folder, there's maybe, I am not sure what languages do you speak. So there's a Tamil folder, there's a Kannada folder, and whatnot. So at that point, those words which are associated with that language is just saved over there. And we call the same object in different words from different languages. So we being multilingual, we have different, one particular object has a lot of words which is associated. So when our brain associates and we save it, like as in we repeatedly see those words and we repeatedly see those objects, we save those words inside our mind, which is not intentional, it happens. And then when a person asks something, for example, we took the, when you said, how are you doing? So I immediately would understand this is English because I have a vocabulary of English. What if I didn't have? Then it would be meaningless for me. What if you're just speaking to me in French right now? I may not understand it, right? So that is something which comes into this big part over here. It has a lot to play, a lot of role to play when it comes to child remembering and saying things. We'll speak about it in a little more detail because I do want to give a focus over here about something. So we would have to understand that in this particular part wherein I understood how are you doing. So it's a question and the person is asking about well-being, and I also look at the body language of the intonation, right? So the person may ask, how are you doing? Hey, hi. Or a person may ask, hi, how are you doing? Or a person may ask, oh, it's been long, how are you doing? So the genuinity of the question or how much the person means is, we can't make it out from the sentence. We have to make it out from the intonation of the person speaking and the body language and the expression. That is something which comes into the picture. It's a very big part of language stimulation to understand. So this is something where a lot of children needs a lot of stimulation to make the vocabulary library more and more and stronger, and connections, this word is this object, this is same, this is different. That particular connections are very, very important network in the brain to be made so that we can go into the part which is recognition. Okay, I can recognize, retrieve the information and recognize, and then I would be able to form a reply. So my brain says, hey, the person asks, how are you doing? So how exactly are you doing? So I'm doing good. I can form so many types of replies, right? I'm doing good. I'm fine. Or I would say, good, how are you? So there are so many types of different replies we can form. So according to how the person's question was, my reply would be formed. And then till this particular, and again, grammatically, we will check in. The brain checks that, okay, how will go, I'm doing fine. That's the answer we're going to give. So I will go first, am will go next, doing will go next, and then fine. And this much speed and this much loud, I may say, thank you. Or I may say, I'm doing fine, thank you. So there are so many different ways a person can say that. So those intonations also will be decided till here. So from the point we attended the stimulus, hear the stimulus, and then retrieve the information, recognized it, formed the reply, and then corrected it grammar-wise and planning-wise. Till this point, we call it as language. So the whole analysis of attention, analyzing is called, and forming the reply and grammatically correcting it would be called as language in terms of speech-language pathology. After this point, so these all things happen in the back of the brain, and not going specific there. So after all of this, we have, the brain says, okay, we are set to go. And the nerves are going to take all of this information to the speech systems, these. So which are the speech systems? So we have our respiratory system, which is lungs, and we have our phonatory system with our throat. So that's vocal cords which work over there, and then articulatory system, which includes our the cheeks, the tongue, the teeth, the lips. All of those, they're called articulators, the ones who form speech sounds. So all of these will be started working. The moment the nerve brings the information, the lung forms how much of air is needed to speak that particular sentence, that particular loud, and fine, thank you. And then, so that air comes up, and the vocal folds, there are vocal folds in our throat, which keep vibrating, and the air goes up. The moment air goes up, the sound starts coming, and from that point to the lip, our articulators shape itself in different ways. So we say pa, bha, tha, ma. There's so many different ways our articulators shape themselves, and that is how the speech comes out. So this whole part of nerves executing the sequence and the fluency and the voice modulations, and that particular part in the pronunciation, that is something which is coming in this particular structure, and that is called as speech. So I'm just repeating for you the whole process wherein the child is looking, attending, hearing, analyzing, remembering, analyzing, forming a reply, and then ready to execute. Till there, it's all language. And after that, wherein it is all motor stuff, wherein body just moves in a motor way, and just the speech comes out as speech. So that is the difference between speech and language. I wonder if the answers which you thought about when I asked what is language and what is speech has some similarity to what we spoke right now. I hope there is. So the simple model, what we look at is a child hears, attends and listens, and then children make and use sounds to form the words, that is speech, and children use words to share meaning, that is talking, or that would be language. So understanding has a big role in between. Also sustaining the retaining all those words in their mind has also a lot to do with our language and speech coming out. Now you might think, why is that, my child is able to repeat back, but he doesn't use the words appropriately when it is meaningfully to be used. Repeating is more a speech kind of a, just the person is supposed to be repeating. So the instruction itself is coming is do this, or let's say. So when you say it, the child echoes the same thing, is more of a speech task rather than being a language task, because there's no analysis being involved in it. We'll come to it more, and I'm sure you're going to have questions later for me on that. But this is what the speech language looks like. And what is communication? So communication can be in any mode. So whatever they need, or what they want to express, the kids or adults or whoever, there would always be a sender and there will always be a receiver. Once the message is being able to go from a sender to a receiver without being without being broken between, then the communication is successful. If the sender sending the message is not clear, then the receiver is not understanding, then the communication broke. Or the receiver got the message but not understanding, and replying back is not happening correct, then again the message is broke. That would be again a communication breakdown. So this would be the definition for speech, language, and communication. Now, what we have to look at before going to language acquisition, I would want to add up one sentence over there about behavior, because it's again one of our agendas. So we have so many different, so we have a lot of vocabulary we are able to speak, but behavior has a very, very big role to play in how we speak, what we speak, when we speak. So with, there are different parts of language. I will give you a small overview about it. The different parts of language. There's one, let's not go into the word as such, but I will tell you what it means. So phonology is all about sounds. Morphology is all about joining sounds. And syntax is all about vocabulary, grammar of the language. Semantics is all about meaning of the language. And pragmatics is all about behavior of the language. So what we are looking at is in phonology, so a lot of children make, first when the child is born, the child makes a lot of sounds like ma, 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 ma. There's so many different sounds and they babble. And then finally you see by 8 or 9 months, you're seeing children talk a lot, but it's not meaningful. It's like jargon, and it's actually called as jargon's speech. And that would be around 8 to 9 months. And then you see a meaningful word emerging by 1 year. Now, according to the normal development expected, that's how it should be. So phonology is the first part which comes in. There are a lot of sound vocabulary coming in. So as the child learns a lot of different sounds to say, so phonology gets stronger. As the child starts joining two sounds, it may not be meaningful. It can be anything, but joining is like pa-tam, pa-ma. There's so many sounds which doesn't have any kind of a meaning, and then they're joining it up, and that would be morph. And then we go to a syntax wherein first thing is vocabulary builds. So a child spoke first word, there's mama, then there's papa, then there's, maybe atta or something which is meaningful in their own language, and they keep adding on to the vocabulary. Many of our children would be in that particular stage, according to what I've understood from the, feedback given. So that particular stage, after that, the child starts joining two words, meaningful words together, and that becomes a phrase. And we'll be looking into it further. That becomes a phrase. And then, so in syntax itself, till the point the child is getting a sentence level, and meaning comes later, but then the sentence level, and in that has grammar, right? There's prepositions, there is using and, because, why. Those kind of grammar part coming in would be all syntax, wherein the child is able to form mean length of utterance, as in length of utterance the child is using. Maybe it is 2 words, 3 words, 4 words. That particular thing increases as we work on syntax more and more and more. After that is when they bring in semantics, wherein it is meaningful. So the child says, when we ask, hey, what is this? So there's a particular meaning. Okay, there's a question to it, right? So, and I have to answer. That is the part which comes in semantics, wherein the child is looking into different kinds of WH questions. And later on, after that level is achieved, I will speak about it more, but about that level is achieved, we go into a part wherein the child needs to know what can I say at this particular time. Maybe mom is speaking to auntie, and I cannot go and say, mama, 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 this, crying, not able to wait, not able to take turns, or not understanding now and then concept, or now not able to understand concepts like, emotions and intonations of this person speaking. Those kind of things come into the pragmatics of language. So you cannot say to somebody, I don't like your dress. That would be rude, right? So we say, I like the other dress better. So that is a polite way of telling it. So these are kind of things is something which comes into pragmatics. Basic ones are turn taking, knowing when to end the conversation, knowing when can I turn take in the speaking, also knowing that, whether the person is interested in what I'm speaking. Those kind of things come as a higher and higher skills of language, more and more and more. So that has a lot to do with behavior as well. So it's like, it's all correlated. If the child, and when we say behavior, that's environmental. So if I said something and somebody reinforced me, I might use, it may be a good reinforcement, not good reinforcement. I might use it more and more, but it depends on how I perceive it. So sometimes you would have seen, we say children to do something and not to say something, and then they would say it and look at you and smile. So these kind of things come, usage of the language coming in different environment, and also the motivation to talk, that is more goes towards the behavior of the language, and which would be helped by in case it is affected, could be helped by a behavioral therapist or ABA specialist. Okay. Now, language acquisition, how does that happen? We would speak about speech as well, but how does the language acquisition happen? So it begins as soon as the child is born. So listening, even it's said that children listen to, and it's actually proven that children listen prenatally. So there are a lot of studies which tells that the pregnant mother should be listening good things, or, which develops the child's brain. And that is, language acquisition starts right then, when the meanings of certain sounds and feelings starts placing in. And it is also found in the research wherein we say that development of language, not only language, of all the other skills, is most rapid. We call it as a critical period, most rapid in between the age of 0 to 5. It's not like a Cinderella time or something. Many parents I've heard in my career, a lot of parents have said that, ma'am, the child is already 4, so is there no meaning of giving speech therapy? It's nothing to do with that. So you have to just understand that the child's development is fastest in between these years. That's why early intervention or early, that's something which is most effective. But later, after 5 years or 6 years, we see that the plasticity of the brain, as in the capability of learning, kind of slows down a little. It's not that it stops, it slows down a little as we go further. So the chronology of development is almost constant and predictive, because as I said, when I started speaking about language itself, I told you, so the child will coo, child starts cooing, going, and then there's babbling, then there's jargon speech, then there is first word, then it is phrase. Then You see certain phrase grammar coming in, then there's bigger sentences, then there's reasoning, and then you have WH questions, and then the child speaks more like an adult with intonations. So this is something which is very predictable, and it's been researched, and highly we can get to know easily when the child is showing delayed symptoms. So language acquisition starts like that. So we just spoke about this. So 3 months going, gurgling sound, and 6 months babbling. Then we have first word, knowing 5 to 40 words. Then this is how the vocabulary starts growing. Nowadays, children are able to recognize letters and words even by 3.5 or 4. Again, it's about stimulation from the parents also, and also environmental stimulation, what they are getting from others around, not only parents. So these are something which affects a child's development until unless the child is not affected by any kind of a medical issues or other disorders which might affect in different areas in different ways. So this is how the language development pyramid looks like. So, when we are looking into intervention, this is how we should be paying attention on. This is a very important pyramid for me to show you so that you know what to expect from speech language therapists once you start working with them. So this is something important. Definitely a speech language therapist or any kind of a therapist for that matter, occupational therapist or behavioral therapist, everyone looks at prerequisites first. Hence, early intervention is very important. We look at prerequisites of the language first. So, here we have just written looking and listening, but I'm talking about eye contact. I'm talking about joint attention, also sitting endurance with different things and different kinds of attention. So those things are something which comes as the first priority when you look at therapy. Then comes in play. What kind of play is a child being involved with? Now that's very important. And you would get to know, looking at it, there is solitary play, and then there is parallel play, then there is group play, or you would say more imaginative play. So these are play is a very important part of child's life, and we are not just talking about playing with one material. It's about different kinds of play the child gets introduced to, and that is how the language gets better. So when you go to a therapist also, you would see prerequisites of the language are being achieved by different kinds of plays. It's not that the therapist is just playing with the kid. It's about there are certain goals which can be achieved through play, and also the social skill can be developed through play. So a lot of playing with the child in different kinds of ways really helps them in growing. And then comes comprehension. Understanding is also called as comprehension, English term. So as a speech therapist or speech language therapist, we look at child's development in 2 ways. So one is expression and one is comprehension. Always in the development, comprehension will be 2 steps ahead of expression. Even in the assessments when we do, we always know that the child's comprehension would be a little more better than the expression. Then the child is delayed or something even then. So comprehension is very important. Same reason you saw the chain, how the speech comes out. So that retrieval and recognition and forming the reply, it's all about comprehension. So we need to work a lot about comprehension. As comprehension builds better and better, the child will give better responses more and more. And you see that they're comprehending a lot step by step. So once the child starts understanding 1-step command, 2-step command and whatnot, you would see, you might would have shown things in the books child wouldn't have shown interest or even looked at the book, or maybe just looked at you at that point, but the child was registering at that point, and you kept repeating it. There was no reaction, and then suddenly you see one day out in open, if the child sees one certain, let's say an animal or something, and remembers, hey, mom said this, and you hear the child talk that particular word. It's all about that comprehension was in process at that point. We just didn't realize it. You were always teaching the kid, as in you were building the vocabulary in their mind, and then suddenly the child uses it. It happens very common in children with spectrum. They register. We have to make sure that the comprehension is doing better and better so that the expression is on the way. Then we look at talking. So first priority as a speech language therapist would be about MLU. MLU means mean length of utterance. So once a child gets the vocabulary, then the 2-word references. So how much more we could add on to 2 words, 2 words, 2 words, 2 words. So if there is so many phrases the child is able to say, then only I would go forward with the 3-word or 4-word stimulation. So after that, possibly a full sentence, but maybe the child is not pronouncing well. A lot of parents say, he speaks something, but I can't understand it. So for us, the priority will be that speak something. It should be meaningful, and the length of utterance should be more and more and more. So as the child gets it better and better and better, the child's comprehension is getting better, expression is getting better, then we would look into the part which is pronunciation. Pronunciation, when you look at language development pyramid, would be the, last to come at, and then we would look into articulation therapy, wherein the child is able to pronounce certain words properly. So these are the parts which we look in for the language development pyramid. This is how the speech language therapy works for language. And I spoke about, again, I had spoken about phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. Even in that, first we work about phonology, work about morphology, and then building vocabulary, that is all syntax and grammar and everything, and then goes to semantics, and then last would be pragmatics. A lot of parents first, saying hi and bye is actually easy, so we also encourage it. But hi and bye is actually greeting, and that comes into pragmatic skill. The child may imitate it just saying hi, but may not be meaningfully saying, like, greeting. Some children pick it up sooner as well. So there is a developmental stage for even pragmatic skills, which can be taught. It's a long, big topic to take up, but we are touching up base right now on the basics. So after you understood about language therapy till now, I'm hoping. After that, there are certain other areas a speech language pathologist looks into when working with children. That is speech exercises, which comes towards the articulation part of it, which we'll be speaking a little more in detail. And then feeding is definitely a big part of, ST's working. So feeding can be, there would be so many different kinds of, so these are the, some of, material which is used for feeding therapy. I'll speak a little about the feeding part first. So there could be picky eaters, there could be problems in sensory problems the child is facing. So the child doesn't, maybe suck, maybe also not able to round the mouth or puff the mouth or chew properly. Those motor things which are coming into the picture is something taken care by a speech therapist. So we use different kinds of tools. This is, these are tools. Mainly these in the picture are from oral placement therapy. Oral placement therapy is one kind, oral placement therapy, OPT, is one kind of therapy wherein we use different kinds of tools to derive motor movement, to get achieved motor movements in the from the child, as well as also the basic, tongue's basic feature is that the tongue is able to taste different materials. So that's the basic function. And then the underlying function is that the tongue moves in certain ways that it produces speech. Speech is definitely an overlaying function, but main function is definitely eating of a mouth. So these are these kind of things, for rounding of the mouth, blowing, and this would be again for sucking, as well as the spoons, different kinds of spoons. When the child has drooling, it is used. Then giving sensory stimulation in the mouth, widening the mouth open, and then this is also for the sucking part. So these kind of things would be used for achieving those basic functions first. And a lot of theory, a lot of school of thoughts are there wherein we say that basic functions when achieved when we do sucking, blowing, those kind of things will help the child to produce speech sounds in case the child is nonverbal. So those are very important functions, which many of us, none of us have a PhD in parenting. So many of us don't know that these things are so important that we should pay attention on, and then it moves to better speech. I know a lot of mothers, actually, I have friends even, the child would be 2 to 3 year old yet, but they still grind things and feed the child, or may not use a lot of spice, or they modify the food quite a bit for the kid, and that actually brings in the child develops sensory part towards different kind of texture. Sorry for the technical glitch. So we were talking about the feeding part, and this is how child develops a sensory problem in between. So this is something which would because we are not giving enough stimulus to the child to realize different kinds of textures and look into different kinds of tastes. More and more the stimulus, the child will be able to achieve more and more, familiarity towards those things, which is very important when it comes to feeding therapy. And then comes the articulation therapy, and we were speaking about the speech exercises. Now that is something which happens for the pronunciation parts of it. So when we're talking about pronunciation, this is how it goes. So first we'll be looking at auditory discrimination. So the child is able to understand two different, so this is pa, this is bha. So difference between two, and then understanding in isolation the word, then the syllable, that is pa, isolation, and pa plus I is syllable, and then the word, say papa, and then phrase papa gaye. So there's so many, so these are the steps we look into when we have to work about pronunciation. Step by step we make the child practice it, and then we reach to the generalization part. So these are the things which we look into when it comes to articulation. So when we are teaching the child, these are some of the techniques which can be used to give prompts. For example, ma. Now this is mostly used with children who have even hearing defects, but also can be helpful when the child is very new to speech and has not yet started using a lot of words or things and just started using some sounds. These kind of techniques can really help. Wherein, I will give you just an example of pa and bha. So try touching your throat right in next to your Adam's apple. Keep the hand over there and start say pa. And now say ba. Try again. Feel what happens in your hand. Pa, ba. Do you feel the vibration being different? So the pa is a voiceless sound and the ba is a voiced sound. So there are differences coming in for all the other sounds, and our articulators are placed in different kinds of manner to pronounce each of these sounds. Ma and pa may sound look very similar. Ma, pa, both is pronounced by the lips. So you need to see, there's difference that ma is made by nose. If you hold on your nose one finger and say ma, ma, you will feel the vibration. Now keep the hand on your nose and say pa, there will be no vibration. So our articulatory system is amazing and very complicated. This small articulators, even a degree difference, a half a degree difference in the position can actually mean a different sound. So na and ta, it's almost the same place of pronunciation if you see. So there are different speech techniques to teach children coming to the articulation, but I would like to request, in case your child is in a, you paid attention on the language pyramid. If the pronunciations, if your child is speaking everything, then and not pronouncing properly, possibly that is when we have to pay attention to this more. But if the child is still catching up words and still catching up phrases and applying it in language, then I would say pay attention on that more, give more motivation. Because if you go into correction of speech at that stage, the child will lose the motivation to learn more. So that would not at all be a good idea to go ahead. Okay. So this would be speech part. So we use different kinds of oral motor therapy is mainly helpful when it comes to feeding, as well as it has come to pronunciation or articulation. Then comes the part of language stimulation. So we'll speak about certain language stimulation techniques which you can use at home right away. Here we are looking at, these are very simple techniques, but very effective ones. So we'll start with self-talk. Self-talk is like a cricket commentary. So you talk aloud about your actions, what you can see and what you can hear, you can feel. This is by definition, but I would say as a therapist, you should pay attention on what you can see and hear. When the child is in your, it is in front of you, and the self-talk would be something like, I'm cutting vegetables, my child is right there, and I will be saying, Mama is cutting potato, cut, 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 cut. So I'm talking about small children. Self-talk really helps to tap that particular part, which I said, building up more vocabulary for comprehension. So when the child is able to see the action, the word, and associate the word with an action, then in that case, the memory runs faster. Because I said I made you understand, right? Word and the action and the object, the network between this, or to say, hey, this is phone. So I would have heard about and seen this kind of stuff a lot, to say this is phone, right? So the association with it builds when you use a lot of self-talk. Self-talk can be a very effective method for parents, and it may sound a little funny because you're just talking to yourself, but you're basically unconsciously building a lot of vocabulary for your child. So self-talk can be really, really effective. Then comes modeling. Modeling is, you're basically modeling for all these techniques. I'll just explain modeling first. So providing an example of specific language or language targets. So you are basically helping the child to, you would model different kinds of techniques for the child. Am I audible? Okay, I'm supposing. Okay, so this is something which we would be looking at. Modeling is something wherein you would be, let's say the child is picking up something, and I have to just give the word. You're modeling by saying, he's picking up a block. Oh, red block. I would not say, Shruti, tell this. I would say, red block. That's modeling. You're modeling for the child of how the word is said. And that self-talk is also one kind of modeling, because you're basically showing the action and the word together. So self-talk is that. Then you have recasting. Recasting is repeat your child's utterances using the correct sounds. Recasting is helpful when, if the child is talking a baby talk. So you basically model in a better way. So the child says, let's use toy. So he says, oi, and you have to say, yes, toy. So if you see the intonation, I paid more attention on toy rather than saying yes. So I did acknowledge the child is telling oi. So I said, yes, toy. So the more emphasis was on, modeling by recorrecting. You're not correcting the child, you're just modeling how you should be pronouncing it. Then comes parallel talk. Parallel talk is wherein you are giving child his or her dialogue. So the child talk aloud about the child's action. So if the child comes to you and says, Mama, she's showing the Bicky jar, and just pulling your cloth and showing that, or maybe saying Bicky. So you say, Mama, I want Bicky. I won't say, Shruti, say, Mama, I want Bicky. I would say, Mama, I want Bicky, or Mama, Bicky. As smaller the child, or what is your child's language stage, according to that, I would model. If the child is only a word level person, then in that case, I would just say, Mama, Bicky. If the child is a little more knows Mama Bicky, so I would say, Mama, I want Bicky. So that is how you use parallel talk. You give the child their dialogue. Okay, and then there is praise. So responding verbally or non-verbally to your child's attempts. So that really develops. As I said, you learn a lot about it you would have learned a lot about it in behavior by now. Then you learned about ABA, but then this would be something, you reinforce the child always gets those stimulations much better. They would use the intonations. When we say good, you would, if any of your children are at present speaking those, you would see they would always say it in the same intonation you're telling. Good boy. So they would say, good boy, So that imitation comes in phrases are the best way to do it, and to build up more imitation and more motivation towards language. Then comes expansion, wherein adding extra words. So just now I gave an example actually, wherein if the child says Mama Vicky, you say Mama I want Vicky. So you add a word or a structure, grammatical structure, to teach the child about language stimulation. These are self-talk and parallel talk we already spoke about. Motheries are good for the language stimulation because you're basically doing different kinds of, using a lot of intonation while, or exaggerating the consonants. You open one say, oh, wow, so cute. Oh, those kind of things are something which is coming up, and it's you're exaggerating it. It catches the child's attention very quickly when you vary your volume. So when you see we therapists talking to children, you would always see us, we would never talk to you like we talk to children. So if I'm the therapist, I possibly will say, hey, how are you doing, to you. And if I see the child, I'll be, hi, how are you? Or, I would say, hi, Yaksh. So this is not the way I would speak to an adult. You would say, why would you make up such kind of sounds? Trust me, it gives you an upper hand on getting their attention really well, and they learn better because they like all that reaction coming from you. So motheries really help. And turn taking can be, it's something you model basically. So respond to babies at trances and pauses when you talk to give a baby turn. So if baby coos, then you coo, and it's kind of turn taking. You say, what is this? And the child replies something. Say apple, apple, apple. You hold on, you speak, and the child speaks. You are basically modeling waiting. You don't speak just because you want to teach the child. So you recorrect and correct and correct. You hold on till you give the chance to the child to speak their word, appreciate it, then go to the next word or model. So that is something which you need to remember. So this was all about the language therapy, articulation therapy, and feeding. So I have just touched the basics. It's quite vast field, and I've only spoken about working with toddlers and younger children. There's much more to it. Possibly we will get a chance to meet again, and I could be explaining that to you. This particular slide is because it's very, very important to you to know when do you start speech therapy or language therapy, and when do you start what. So when you're working with a child who's having any kind of a delay or, any disorders like autism spectrum, ADHD and whatnot. So in that case, these are the team which will be very, very important to work with. And every one of them actually plays a lot important role. This side of team, resource teacher, principal and teachers, they would come in picture once the child is in school. But other than that, behavioral specialist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, psychologist, parents, doctors, they come up even at this stage when the child is really young. So all of them have a very important part to play. Trust me, you definitely being the bridge between all of them. So when do you start speech therapy? So many of the parents, there are therapists or other professionals who say, no, the child is not ready for speech therapy or ready for speech therapy. How do you exactly define it? You are supposed to be understanding that when you see a child, prerequisites are building. We spoke a lot about prerequisites. So prerequisites to the communication are building. And child has reached a point wherein there is certain sound coming out. Now, it may be a meaningful sound, may not be a meaningful sound, but the sound is relating to something he's doing. or, you know, it's like a babbling. The moment that comes in, the child is ready for speech therapy. In case the child has feeding troubles, then that is our priority to look into. Then also you can start speech therapy, look into the feeding therapy aspects of it. And the moment the child is picking up a lot of vocabulary, you should increase the the number of times you meet speech therapists, so that more and more stimulus can be given and you get well trained to work at home. And there is always one thing: practice, 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 and generalize and practice more. So that is something you would have to keep doing. And when you're working with your child, you have to understand speech and language. As I made you on, in the slides, you got to know it's a very complicated process. So if the base is built by a behavioral therapist and occupational therapist together, then speech therapy can be more effective. It's not that you can't start early, it's about being more effective. So group work will give you better results always, and make sure you be the bridge and always connect the dots in between the therapists in case they are not in contact. Thank you. You have any questions? I'm very happy to answer. Let's, yeah, thanks.